Welcome to the Extra Time Podcast, where you'll hear sports stories you might not have heard about from people you might not have heard of. Let's get into this week's show.
Welcome in to another episode of the Extra Time Podcast. It's not a real sunny spring welcome in, but it is a big warm welcome in. We're almost halfway through November, on the 14th of November today. Movember, you could say. The boys have been saying that I've got a bit more growth going on. I've got 28 Ks under the belt as well. Still time to donate. Do it for your mates. Don't do it for me. But today, a massive show and a big cohort in here today. Three of me best mates, three of the best in the business. We've got Josh Herriott, Noah Fisher and Mark Woods alongside myself, Aidan Box. And first, we're going to go to racing.com's own Josh Herriott for what is going to be a pretty massive recap of the spring racing, which has been absolutely phenomenal, Josh. And Mark Zahra had a real breakout season as well.
Thank you, Boxy. That's very kind. He certainly did, though. He's had a tremendous spring on a horse that has given us some memories that will last many years to come in without a fight. Just a tremendous spring from Mark Zahra, and to think that he was on the Melbourne Cup winner last year, Gold Trip. He had both options as well this year. He could have taken Gold Trip again, but he had the foresight to go to without a fight. I think it was a wonderful decision, and he's had a tremendous spring, as you say. So it's wonderful for him. He's a world-class rider. He's one of the best in the world, and he's certainly left an indelible legacy on this year's Spring Carnival.
And the carnival itself, how'd you see it overall?
Oh, I thought it was outstanding. We had some really good racing and some really good crowds as well. I was reading an article, could have even been this morning, crowds are up significantly from last year, and engagement as well with the Melbourne Cup. And I was talking with Matty Hill a couple of weeks ago, actually, who calls here in Melbourne, and he was saying that I think it was 50 million people the Cup reached. So, he was calling the Cup to around about 50 million people, which certainly sounds quite daunting.
It's almost double our population.
Yeah,
27.
Yeah, it's quite extraordinary, the numbers, and that's around the world as well, because it's become a big international event, I guess, and it's huge over in England because they love their racing over there. But overall, I thought the carnival was really good, and probably one of my favourite races from the carnival was the Cox Plate with Romantic Warrior winning, and I was texting you on Cox Plate Day, actually.
I was going to mention that because I probably should have done it earlier, but I messaged you for a tip, and I said, mate, who are we looking at in this race? And it didn't win, but boy, no. I wasn't unhappy because what a race it was.
No, it was such a good race, and we were talking about that at the conclusion of the race, just how good it was. And to have a horse like Romantic Warrior come out here and run such a good race was brilliant for Australian racing. The Cox Plate is one of my favourite races because it's a weight for age race. It's probably the best race we have here in Australia. I know the Melbourne Cup is built up to be, the great race, and it is the people's race, but the Cox Plate, for a racing purist, doesn't get much better. And it was a cracking field as well, probably the best in recent memory for me. And it's been won by some champions over the years, most recently obviously Winx. So for Romantic Warrior to do what he did and chase down Mr. Brightside, who looked to have the Cox Plate won, and it was a terrific ride by Craig Williams, one of my favourite jockeys, and then to lunge at the last moment right on the post and get the win, I just thought it was unbelievable. And a terrific ride from J-Mac, who won the Cox Plate. He also won the Oaks aboard Zardozi, and then the Derby as well on Riff Rocket. So he had a tremendous spring as well. He's one of the great riders also. So he and Mark Zahra capped off a wonderful spring. But what a race it was, and it doesn't get much better than that. Unfortunately for the Hayes boys, who train Mr. Brightside, they finished second a couple of times this spring. They were nudged out in the Derby by a Pimple as well in a photo finish. They obviously lost the Cox Plate by a whisker, and then Mr. Brightside was oh so close on Champion Stakes Day as well, coming second behind Pride of Jenny. But no, it's been a terrific carnival for the Hayes boys, and their stable is continuing to build.
Beautiful. And you mentioned J-Mac ride in Oaks, and if you are a keen listener, you'll know that one of our mates here had a pretty massive punt on the line there. That was the last green tick he was looking for, and he would have been in for a serious payout. Woodsy, just talk us through the feelings, mate. We're on for a big night at Crown that night, but it just didn't quite pull through for you.
Well, I actually messaged Josh for a tip before the race. I'm like, who's your tip? He knew nothing about the pun, and he goes Tropical Squall, the one that I did on. I'm thinking, okay, great. I'm also there going, it hasn't run the distance. They're talking it up, and they were talking it up on the broadcast. I'm there going, okay, it'll be a front runner and all that. So throughout the race, it went on, and I was like, it's in a position where it can do, but I want to see when it enters a straight, I'll know. And watching a few of the races during the Spring Carnival, when they've hit the Flemington straight, I've actually called it a few times. I'm like, that horse is going to win. It got to the straight, and I've just gone, okay, yep, no. Next.
And to add a bit of salt to the wound, it's a terribly long straight as well.
I know. Well, that's the thing. No, well, as soon as it ended the straight, I'm like, it started going backwards.
Yeah, the squall went backwards at the straight, unfortunately. It was a great call, though, and you could hear throughout the call that Zardozi was coming.
Yeah.
You just knew every time he mentioned him, he did, this horse is going to be dangerous towards the end, and that was another brilliant ride as well.
No, it certainly was, and J-Mac, again, just with his brilliance in the saddle, and James Cummings as well, training an Oaks winner. So I know his father did it his grandfather, on multiple occasions. Right. I think his father Anthony has won an Oaks as well. So it's a race that has a rich history in his family. Well,
anything else to add on the front of racing, Josh?
No. Well, I'll finish with it. It's been a great carnival. The crowds were brilliant. We had great weather as well. I know in a couple of the recent carnivals we've had some poor weather, which has deterred a few
Melbourne
people.
Cup comes to mind.
Exactly. So I certainly think the weather helps, and without a fight again, a true staying champion, and will go down in the pantheon of the greats. The 12th horse to do the Cups double. So without a fight, won the Caulfield Cup as well, in what was a brilliant ride, and then of course the Melbourne Cup, and two very good staying contests as well. And I'll touch on this as well. We saw Damien Oliver for the final time in a Melbourne Cup carnival. Unfortunately, it wasn't meant to be with his ride on Alan Kerr. I'm glad that Alan Kerr was able to race in the end, but Ollie was able to ride a couple of winners on Derby Day, which was good, and then rode a winner on Melbourne Cup Day as well. So at 51, he's going to hang up. I know he's going to hang up the silks and sit back and relax, I think, and he'll enjoy retirement. I think he's been one of the great jockeys over a number of years. Finishes with 129 Group 1s, both in Australia and internationally as well. So hats off to Ollie. And hats off to Matty Hill, who I mentioned before. I thought he called beautifully. He's one of the great broadcasters in this country. Everyone thought that Bill Collins was one of the greats, which he is, the accurate one, but I think Matty Hill's giving him a run for his money, so he called beautifully once again.
Yeah, very, very well said, and it's great to see some jockeys get some love. That's what we're all about, giving some love to people that may not get it, across the mainstream. So thank you very much, Josh, our racing correspondent. If you want to hear more from Josh, well, he calls races backwards on racing.com. He's that good. And if you want to hear him live, well, there's no better place than Cape Woolamai, rather.
Yes.
Beautiful part of the world down in Gippsland, and Josh calls the races down there. So make sure you get down there in summer. He'll be around and you won't regret it. But up next, I should introduce the last person on the show. Who's just been sitting quite patiently, because it's time to talk semi-finals, time to talk cricket, and who better to talk cricket than Mulgrave legend Noel Fisher. Welcome in.
It's a pleasure to be here. I mean, not every day you get to listen to the great man Joshy Harriott in action, talking about a big passion of his in racing, but time to talk about cricket. It's coming down to the big end of it at the moment, Boxy, and 2 games to go, and I actually can't believe Australia are actually in the position they are.
Remarkable. And we spoke about this last episode briefly when you couldn't quite join us, but from where we were, it's so Australian to come back and just have that heart, because you could see the heart of this team is massive. And quite honestly, if you asked me at the start of the tournament how big's the heart of this team, and I would have said in these colours, you know, I mean, we've won it before, but not huge. The Test team's got a massive heart, but this team have really proved me wrong when you sit in a semi-final against the Proteas.
Well, I remember, I think we were having this discussion pre-tournament and into the first few games where we weren't actually doing too well, and you guys, I'm pretty sure, said it would be a miracle if we were able to get into a position where we look like winning. Or it would be a miracle if we won it. So I think for us to be in the position we are now, I think it's an incredible sentiment, incredible job to the players.
We've got that miracle, and his name is Glenn Maxwell. So that's helped a fair bit because genuinely, and this is not my words, these are words from all the professionals who analyse the game and have played the game. The things he has done have never even been thought of this tournament. First of all, the fastest 100. People didn't really think that could happen. And then to do that and then make that insane 200 and batting with Pat Cummins in a game that we should have lost. To do both of those things, even those things either side, put you in the Hall of Fame in terms of a one-off performance.
But it's also making a 200 with an injury. I think that's the thing. It's like
at number 6.
Yeah, like all those little things. It's like, oh, he made 200. Okay, great. With an injury at number 6 in like added conditions, and it's like, well,
it's really interesting as well from where we've come from, because our last loss was to this same team we now face in the semi-final. And why is that important? Well, because it's our second loss. They've also got 2 losses, but they sit above us. And there's tornado-like conditions heading for Kolkata, which is where the game is. So the point is, we need the rain to stay away, or we need a game to happen, because if it gets called off, unfortunately, that's where our tournament will end. That's cricket. You can say all you want about it, but my thought on that is we didn't beat them in the group stage, so it's fair enough if they move on.
Well, yeah, it's funny how you say this. If it gets canned, we lose, because it does remind me of 99, where it was a tie and we moved forward because we had the better previous records and we finished higher. So it's kind of like that full circle moment in cricket where, once again, this situation where if no game goes ahead, or if it's a draw, they go through. I don't know if there's super overs or not. It's just a case of they go
Boundary
through.
count back, don't they?
I believe they've introduced super overs since the
it
World
would
Cup
be
final.
a super over, because of last. So at least,
and then the old boundary count back run out.
It's a
sort of,
super
yeah.
over first. So at least we're not actually going back to the old 99 rule. It would have been good for a super over back then, but I'm not sure if we would have won it or not. But I think it just it's that Australia-South Africa rivalry being rekindled once again, and I can't wait to see, especially because we've had 2 losses, the last one being South Africa, and then we've hit our form since, so we're probably in the best possible stance that we can be.
I mean, if you go back to the first time we mentioned the World Cup, we kept on changing our lineup, and it's something we've actually, since that loss to South Africa, obviously Carey has been out of the team. He just couldn't quite find form in India, and then Inglis came in. He's actually been quite steady with the bat. I know.
Very important innings against Sri Lanka.
Yeah, very important. That's what I mean. So in the games that we did need someone to stand up, he was quite clinical.
And that's what you want from your keeper, so he's doing really well.
No, exactly that. I mean, you look at keeper bats we've had before in World Cups. Adam Gilchrist obviously comes to mind, and no one will probably ever come close to being able to top him in multiple forms of the game. But we've actually been able to keep our lineup very, very steady. I know that Glenn Maxwell missed a game with concussion, falling off the golf cart. I know that Mitch Marsh had to go home just for family issues, and he actually gave a nice touch on that after the last game when he made 100.
Beautiful, yeah.
I believe it was his pop.
Dedicated it to his granddad, and I think the family were at home morning, and they were able to watch the game, and he said, I'm so glad they were able to watch. And I mean, he didn't really say it, but like, boy, is everyone glad he put on that performance. It was a dead rubber for us, sure, but 177 not out. if there was more runs to chase, he probably could have made a 200 with Maxi. But yeah, second highest score, I think, by an Australian now.
It's crazy. And we have now 2 out of the top 5 highest scores in one-day cricket. Oh, it might be 3 because I think Dave Warner got 164.
Yeah, we went over that last episode. Woodsy was trying to guess them. He did pretty well. A lot of them are non-Australians, but it's good to see another Australian in there. You're right. And it's interesting you talk about Maxi and the concussion falling off the golf cart, because I was listening to one of the interviews after his 200, and he actually credits a lot of those shots and a lot of his ability to his golf game. He said some of the training he was doing, and this is crazy, I think he was saying that he wouldn't move his feet, and he'd just swing using his hips, and he'd just use his upper body. And he said it actually got me just watching the ball harder. And he said that means I'm more confident swinging if my feet are in the right spot. And that's Glenn Maxwell's whole game, because his feet are in horrific positions. And then in that inning specifically, when he couldn't move his feet because he was in so much pain, he was able to still hit sixes over mid-wicket with his feet facing the opposite direction, which no one else in the world can do. Maybe Steve Smith, because he's also weird like that. But it's funny how he said it just ended up feeling like I was hitting the golf ball because of his swing coming from his upper body and his feet not moving. And yeah, he's a weird guy for sure. Like I was listening, he was interviewed with Jared Waitley on my way in, and Jared said, "What was the feeling like in that last over when you knew you needed, the 10 or whatever it was, or the 7 or 8 to make the 200?" He said, "Yeah, well, Pat said to me, let's just calm down and make sure we." And I just turned to Pat and said, "Mate, don't you bloody worry. You start that, and this is over. It's done. I've got this." So we're very lucky to have him. I said he is a miracle, and yeah, he basically plays cricket like he plays golf, which I'm sure he plays well, and he doesn't fall off the cart. So maybe falling off the cart's actually really helped us. Who knows? But there's sort of miracles you need, and you need those players to stand up because we're facing South Africa, if we get a game, let's hope we do, who has one of those highest scores in this tournament, and one of the tournament's leading run scorers in Quinton de Kock at the top, who, just like us, just like David Warner, has found his best form back again. And their captain, Temba Bavuma, who's one of my favourite cricketers in the world. He's small in stature, but he's got a massive heart, and he's come such a long way since you come onto the scene. And then all 4 of the semi-final teams, I feel like, boys, have every single player in their lineup can win the game for them. And I think South Africa definitely has that.
Oh, 100%. And talking about Glenn Maxwell and Quinton de Kock, they bat very similarly. And I was going to mention Maxwell's footwork against Afghanistan, because Mulgrave's new head coach, Mick Hancock, he's very just for head movement. If your head position's right, you can hit a cricket ball as well as you'd like, and you don't have to move your feet. He said footwork's the most overrated thing in the game. And when you see someone like Glenn Maxwell just having his head in the right position and playing the most unorthodox shots of all time, and it paying off, it proves correct that if your head's in the right spot and you can time a cricket ball, then what's stopping you?
Yeah, 100%. And I think the best comparison for that is someone that has elite footwork. Like I watch the feet of Marnus Labuschagne, and he's amazing to watch technically, because I haven't seen too many more technically sound cricketers. The way he moves to the ball, and he's always balanced. His whole body's balanced. But he hasn't come on and made big scores in this World Cup, because I think the white ball is right. It's getting to those guys who can just see the ball, hit the ball, and be balanced up top, like Maxi was training. They're the ones that are going to make big scores. You see Mitchy Marsh do that. When he's sitting down the ground, he usually just puts his foot forward, not always to the ball, and he just uses his strength and his eye to hit the ball down the ground. And
it's ridiculous, because it's same in local cricket. When you play cricket wherever you play,
it's annoying. But
it's so annoying. Like when you try to hit the ball technically correct, and the guy that's just swinging like a barn door can hit 100 off 30 balls, and it's all sound.
Yeah, the fella that's come back after 8 years and he hasn't played, he's just not moving. Yeah,
it's great.
Yeah, and they've got so much batting power. I mentioned the top 2, but then they've got Aiden Markram, David Miller, who hasn't really had a massive tournament, but it's the finals are for those players like that who haven't produced but are about to, and you can feel he's impending. And then they're a lot like us in that they really stick with their quicks, even though they might not be taking heaps of wickets. And those quicks are so lethal, even though the wickets aren't as fast, that they can still be dangerous. Obviously, they've still got Rabada, they've got Ngidi, who's come a long way, and then Maharaj can play a big part as well, one to watch. I'm not as worried anymore about us in the middle overs getting done over by spin because of the weight of runs we're able to produce at the top. So I think if you're going to ask me how we win, I think it just relies on Warner and Head. If Warner and Head get a good start against the Quicks and, give us that 100-run buffer, 80-plus run buffer that we've been getting, and then you have the luxury of Mitch Marsh, one of the most informed bats in the team, coming in, Maxwell down the order, I think everything comes into line there. And obviously, when you look at our lineup, we've talked about it so much, but those top five, Head, Marsh, Warner, Maxwell comes into it. Smith's probably due. His spot's actually been a bit debated, but then Marnus can hold it down, and then the bowling lineup's been quite tremendous. I mean, Adam Zampa at the start of the tournament, I thought, no, he's not going to keep up with the India's spinners and stuff like that. Leading wicket taker for the tournament.
Which is unbelievable. I don't think anyone saw that coming, but I was going to talk about Steve Smith because I was saying he's actually probably peaking at the right time. You look through this form of the World Cup and his scores are starting to come along. It was against Bangladesh. I believe he made a good score, and he's just looking good. His technique looks like it's a good spot. He's hitting the ball cleaner than I've seen before, and I think he's going to play a massive part in this final series. He's been there before. I think it's only Dave Warner, Steve Smith, Josh Hazlewood, Mitchell Starc, and Pat Cummins that played in the last World Cup final. So there's a lot of people that haven't played in a World Cup final before, and these guys' experience will be unbelievable to pass it on to the guys. I mean, Travis Head came back with a broken arm, hits 100, and then he kind of dips in form a little bit more, and he's someone that's due for a couple of runs, I'd think, against South Africa. But if Australia make it to the final, I'm backing us to go all the way, no matter who we play. I know we got to go through India, but I'll tell you what, I want to play in this form.
Yeah, and if we are to win it, and I said it a few weeks ago, it's likely that we're going to have to go through the two teams that defeated us. Again, the Kiwis have every chance to get over them, and maybe they will, and then that'd be awesome because they might be able to come second again. But yeah, Travis Head, another player that just goes real hard, hitting the ball with his eyes. But really, I think it could go either way. I really hope it goes ahead. But yeah, the other good thing about Steve Smith and that innings was he was under pressure because there was a bit of speculation whether we go with him or we go with Stoinis. Obviously, Maxwell didn't play that game, so both of them played. Stoinis didn't get to bat, but Smith's 63 not out. Under pressure, it gives me great confidence that under pressure in the semi, he can just go out and be Steve Smith. And he's one of those guys that he needs runs for confidence. It doesn't matter if he's just hitting the ball nicely. He needs runs for confidence. And he's got great confidence now, which is awesome to see. And he's got many runs under his belt, which runs under the belt is going to be the topic of the quiz for this week, which is, like I said off air earlier this morning, it's coming a little bit of a mini segment regularly here on the show. So I need all three of you to name the top 10 Australian leading run scorers at World Cups.
Of all time?
Of all time. You can either work together or you can work against each other.
We'll do work together.
Warner would be up there. Oh.
David Warner.
Yeah.
Second.
Ricky Ponting.
David Warner is second. He's ranked 5th overall with 1,491. Ricky Ponting is number 1. He's second.
So would Steve.
Second all time with
Michael Clark?
1743.
I was thinking Mike Hussey.
Michael Clark
Hussey,
is 9th with 888. Michael Hussey is incorrect.
And where would Smith be? I think
Stephen Smith is number 3
Wow.
with
Really?
1,100.
How many World Cups did he play? This would be his third, wouldn't it?
Third or fourth?
Adam Gilchrist.
Yeah, I was
Adam
gonna say
Gilchrist, number 4.
I was going to say Gilchrist.
1,085 runs.
Still like
Matthew
that.
Hayden.
Matthew Hayden, number
Suspense.
6, 987.
I'm trying to think of the 2000s teams.
Andrew Simons.
Oh,
Incorrect.
Wow.
no.
You
So
got one more strike.
Yeah, okay.
Jeez, how many we got?
Okay, let's
I'll give you
discuss
4.
this.
I'll give you 4 strikes. You've got the
So-
top 4. You've got the top. Yeah, you've got the top.
And we
4.
need the top 5.
You need 10.
10.
Oh, 10.
So-
sorry.
4, and then we have 9.
Let's not go too hastily.
I was thinking, this isn't my answer, but I think Damien Martin.
Incorrect.
No, that was.
He just said that wasn't his answer. Okay, we're allowed to have a discussion
All right,
here.
all right,
Okay,
go on.
so we've got to actually think on who, like Damien Martin would have been a good opener.
Who
for one
opened
day,
with
but it's
Warner
like
in the
it's
last
the
World Cup?
question. Like, who
Finch.
played?
Aaron Finch.
You've got
Finch.
6 out of 10.
But has
Aaron
Finch
Finch.
played in
You've
many
got-
World Cups? That's the question.
You've got 6 out of 10. You
He would have
need
played in
4.
3 World Cups, I reckon.
So
Finch.
you reckon if you want to go for a third strike, personal strike, go for it?
No,
No, you're doing this together. It's 4 strikes
I'm
total.
Yeah, I know that, but he's taken the two.
Oh.
To
I'm
begin
talking
with.
aloud here because he played in the 15 and played in the 19 World Cup. Aaron Finch. And he made bulk runs.
who
If you want a
played-
hint, who was the last person you guessed? Matty Hayden?
The first one we got
Clark.
correct was Matty Hayden. That was the last one we got correct.
987 runs, and Hayden is at number
6.
7. Number 6, sorry.
Well, I
I'm
think
trying
it
to
has to be-
think the 90s, because the 90s, like 99, 2003, 2007, we won, didn't we? So in that era, who played? Yeah, hold on. Is it people from that era?
It's all time.
No, I'm saying, is there people from that era still in it?
Yes.
Okay. I've got a big clue there. I reckon.
Dean Jones, surely.
There's
he
people.
wasn't, he
There's
wasn't that era.
there's
I'm trying to
pre,
think,
no.
what about Gilchrist?
There's pre-2000s.
We've
He's
answered
on
Gilchrist.
there's
there.
pre-2000s.
Oh, he's on
people.
there. Have we said that? already?
Three 2000s left.
There we go.
No, I said there's people pre-2000s
Oh,
left.
pre
yes.
2000.
Surely Jones then. Dean Jones. He used to whack the whiteboard.
There's people from every generation, pretty
Steve
much.
Waugh?
Oh, who'd be up there? He was a World Cup captain. I'd
You
say
reckon Steve Waugh?
He was a good white ball player.
Yeah.
Steve Waugh?
Correct. Number 7, 978 runs. 9 runs
No,
behind Hayden.
I reckon Aaron Finch would, did he score runs
He
at a World
scored
Cup?
bulk runs in
Yeah.
England.
Well,
Aaron Finch.
Incorrect.
Finch.
Finch,
Oh, no.
Finch was, I think, 11th or 12th.
Oh, that is a piss take.
Pre 2000s.
How many more we got left?
1 strike.
How many more we got left to answer?
3.
Okay,
I think
I'd
3 or
go
4.
Question: is there anyone from the current generation still playing?
How many clues do you want?
A lot.
I'd be going.
I said there's people from every generation.
so this
that
is not to
we would have
Boxy.
lived.
This is to Josh and
Maxwell.
No,
Played 3 World Cups.
of course, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Correct.
Yep.
1 place under
one,
Steve
Fish.
Waugh. He's currently 80 runs behind him.
Yeah.
So
So
2.
would we go?
Maxwell
pre-
is
pre-
number
2000s?
7. Number 8, sorry.
So since the 70s.
And what number we got left?
You need
5.
number 10
Yeah.
and number 5.
I think it has to be Dean Jones.
You can go there. I'm gonna just talk
wanna
to you
go
two
that.
for a second. I'm thinking people like Mark Taylor, but I can't recall how he went in the one day scene.
And then, of course, there were people like Ian Healy, who were solid batsmen as well
Yeah.
in that era.
Can we just take the money and run?
No.
What's the cash out value?
I'll just have a guess. You got a strike. You get it wrong, you get
So
it
can
right.
we each get one more guess if we get a
Sure.
strike? So
Sure. I'll make it even easier for
Yeah,
you.
okay.
No, we'll do a let's do a collective one.
Oh.
Come on, boys. We've got to
It
be
should-
bold here.
I'm really certain. I reckon.
Okay,
Dean,
well,
I think Dean Jones. will be on
Take
that
all
list.
4 strikes. Go ahead.
I don't
say
want to take all 4 strikes.
Say it though. Go on.
No, because I reckon I'm wrong. He's gonna laugh at me. Glenn McGrath.
Say yeah.
Number 5. That's one that's getting me.
Number 5 and number 10. Gilchrist was 4 with 1,085 runs.
So someone's played a lot of cricket.
Hayden was 6 with 987.
So I also got 1,000 one-day runs.
Did Mark Waugh play?
Yeah, so I was thinking Mark Waugh.
I'll take the bullet for the team. Okay.
Yeah.
Is it another Mark W?
It is Mark Waugh, number 5, with
Yeah.
1,004
Well done,
runs. Number 10 to go,
Can I ask how many runs this person scored?
815.
So he's probably played in 3 World Cups.
Yeah.
That's where someone like Mark Taylor would actually fit the mold on that, but I'm not confident on that answer.
We
He's
said
pretty
Maxi, didn't we?
You said
we
the
said
Maxwell.
Maxwell is number 8 with 898 runs.
This is where I'm going try and figure it out. I'm like
Clark is
trying to
number 9.
remember that era of the team, and it was like,
This is a good question, Boxy.
oh, No, he wouldn't have played that many. I just thought of Michael Bevan, but I'm not sure he
Right.
played that many World Cups. He was a one-day specialist, though. He reminds me a lot about, like, a lot.
I thought it was Dean Jones.
You wanna say Dean Jones? I'll go the Bevan route, but I'm not sure he played many World Cups.
How many World Cups did Simon Kadich play?
I don't think he played one.
He didn't play one,
I
did
don't reckon
he?
he played one.
Yeah, right.
Been a while since you.
Was it?
you
Did
popped the answer.
Yeah, I know.
JL play many World Cups?
Justin
Oh.
Langer, yeah.
He would have opened the batting in a few, I reckon.
I reckon that.
Yeah.
I reckon though the three
probably not a bad
names
shout.
we've got right now. I can't think of anybody else, and he's going to say someone like Greg Blewett or someone
Don
else.
Bradman,
Greg
probably.
Blewett, yeah.
Was it? You lock in an answer, mate.
No, okay. Who do you think, Josh?
I don't mind the suggestion of JL, simply because we've had Matty Hayden, and the two of them
Yeah.
used to open the batting together.
And that fits the mold, obviously,
Um,
with 99,
But we think of
2003,
Test cricket,
2007.
did JL play much one day? I think he did
I
play
think he
one-day
did.
cricket.
I think he did.
Well, that fits the mold of the 99, 2003, 2007 era.
Hmm.
And
I think JL could be the one.
you're gonna.
No, you're taking the bullet, was he?
Well, I'll take the bullet. Justin Langer.
Incorrect.
Who is it?
David Boone, number 10.
Oh, Booney.
David
815 runs.
That's a good one. Stumped us there.
As a bonus,
He now works for the ICC
He
as
does.
a cricket referee. As
Bonus
a referee,
question.
Umpire.
who is the
Umpire's
all-time
referee.
leading run scorer in history of World Cups?
In history of World Cups. And it's not Australian. I don't think.
Is it Australian?
Not necessarily.
It's either going to be.
Obviously, the leading Australian is Ricky Ponting.
Yeah.
The first person came to mind was Callis
Yeah.
for white ball cricket.
I'm trying to think.
Or like
is it somebody that was last week? Sansa?
So, last week.
Or was it one of the last week's Sansa?
Last week was highest scores. So, for a clue,
What
Ponting
was-
was the first Australian, the second all-time.
So is the number one? Are they one of
Obviously
the
higher
answers?
than Ponting.
Are they one of the answers from last week?
I can't remember.
Oh,
This person has, if my maths is correct, more than 500 more runs than Ponting.
Brendan McCullum.
would giving it the nation give it away?
Yes, I'll give you each a guess.
Okay.
Well, the two kind of mind for me are Callis and McCullum.
McCullum, yeah.
Played a lot of cricket.
Oh.
Well, what about Virat Kohli?
He scored
Nah.
he scored a lot of
I
runs. He's played. This is his
How
fourth
many-
World Cup.
Fourth.
He played
yeah.
2011, 2015, 2019. It could be Virat.
Mm.
I'm going to need an answer. Who wants to start?
You want to go with... That's not a bad shout.
I'll go Saywag. I'm going to be completely wrong.
Verenda Saywag?
I'm just going completely left field here. No, it's My
Is that your answer?
my first thing was Sachin Tendulkar, so I'm going to go Sachin
He hasn't played
Tendulkar.
much white ball cricket.
Correct.
Oh,
Yeah.
wow.
I did not think
Sachin
he played much.
Tendulkar leads
Let's
all
go.
run scorers in World Cup
I was
history
going to say
with
Tilakratne Dilshan.
Two-
Here I am going,
2000
Sachin Tendulkar, first thing that came to mind. I'm like, I don't know if I should answer it or not.
2,278 runs, over 500 more than second place, which was punter. So that's the quiz for this week.
Wow.
You did pretty well, lads. In the end, you got 9 out of 10, and you did get the bonus. So stay tuned on that. We'll probably keep that one going. I'll think of a different one for you next week. Hopefully you can keep your form up. But, well, all the best to the Aussies. We're right behind them, and we probably won't see you before the final. But if we do get over South Africa in any way, shape or form, we'll be heading to yet another World Cup final. The semi on Australian time will be this Thursday night, and this final, the big dance, if we are to be there, is Sunday night Australian time. So make sure you're all tuning in and watching our boys go as far as they can and hopefully get another World Cup. That'll be number 6, I think,
Be up there.
which is quite easily the most in history. So we're right behind them. Not much more we can say. Our jobs are done. We're just going to sit back and enjoy. And hopefully next week when you tune into Extra Time, we're wearing a heaps of Aussie kit in green and gold as World Cup champions. So that's all for that segment.
Okay, now, thank you, Josh, for joining us. He has to go do some racing.com stuff, I'm sure. Now, Boxy, you've got a bit of flack this week because of your AFLW predictions. You said Sydney couldn't win. You said North Melbourne couldn't win, and yet here we are after the first week of finals. Adelaide lost. Melbourne lost. North Melbourne steamrolled them. And Sydney beat Gold Coast. So how are you feeling?
Yeah, it's really good to always pick and prod and give people sound bites that they can watch the podcast for, and it clearly worked in our favour that time. We're building. We're going to be more popular, which is nice. So keep listening because I'll keep giving you those hot takes that you might not like, but are going to end up being true. I am impressed by North Melbourne. If you did actually watch the episode and not just the short, I did say that there is a likelihood that if they do get over the top of Melbourne, then they can rewrite all of what's happened this season, because I wasn't wrong. They'd been quite abysmal against the top three. They hadn't been able to defend, and all of a sudden they kept Melbourne goalless until the last quarter, which, again, they have not done. And, just a different beast in the finals. And I did say that their senior leaders needed to step up, and, boy, did they or what. So pretty much every player I mentioned for them who needed to step up had an outstanding game. And that's what finals are about. And it's like, it's not like much else, really. When you get into a final, it's nothing like the regular season. You can rewrite everything. It starts from scratch. And it was straight down to their mentality for me, because everyone who's played or watched a finals game of football, it's all about that start. If you get the jump on someone, mentally they're so far behind. And Melbourne going into that would have been like, we've beaten these guys. We took care of these guys easily during the year. You know, they can't beat us. They haven't shown anything against the top three. And that's a mental problem when you get jumped by that team who you think's going to be quite easily to overrun. It's so hard to get back. Mentally, it's so hard to get back, which means you're not going to push hard enough. And they just got overwhelmed. And North Melbourne, again, I'm going to go back, and I did say that they have power to score, and they just didn't have the power to score in a shootout with Melbourne. And in the end, they didn't need to, because their defence stepped up massively. So I'm really impressed by North Melbourne. They set up a pretty big preliminary final against, as Fish said, Sydney, he thinks, either Sydney or Adelaide. But massive for them, because now, like you said, with Adelaide losing to Brisbane, North Melbourne hold the top seed now. So if they do win their preliminary final, the grand final will be at their home ground. So that's massive for them. A home grand final awaits. They just one win away from that. And yes, I may have said that they can't win it, but they did at least turn their tide around in terms of my belief. But got a lot of flack for that, not at least from Extra Time's own Simone Wern. Wasn't really happy with me, sent me a personal message saying, not the Kangaroos, can you believe it? And I said, well, off of what I have in front of me at that stage, they don't look to show anything against the top sides, but they certainly did. So what a final series it is. The top two seeds have lost.
Well, it just goes to show how even this competition is. I can remember, and I'm putting my hand up, I said something about the tiers. It was Melbourne, Adelaide, Brisbane, then North Melbourne. I think North Melbourne have definitely jumped into that top tier. And you're saying about the home final, the grand final. So the grand final venues have been announced if teams win it. So Icon Park will host if North Melbourne or Melbourne are the top seed. Now that will be if North Melbourne wins their prelim, it's Icon Park. If Brisbane win their prelim but North Melbourne lose, it's Brighton Homes Arena. If North Melbourne, Brisbane lose and Melbourne win, then it'll be Adelaide win, it's Norwood Oval in that situation. So North Melbourne, Brisbane both lose. Adelaide win, they get their. It's all complicated, but this just goes to show how AFLW is.
If you're still following, well done. But like I said, their leaders standing up, and I put a bit of heat on Jazz Garner and Ash Riddle last week and said, you can have your big numbers, but you need to do something with them. Last week, on the weekend, massive qualifying final win. Again, they had their numbers, but a bit less. So they had 26 and 23 respectively. But Garner had 12 tackles. And that's the thing they need to lift in their game, defence. Garner had 12 tackles. Riddle had 5 tackles. And they missed their shots. But, I mean, Riddle had 6 clearances as well. And then, obviously, another person I mentioned, just to say that not all of my predictions go down into the bin, Talia Randall, 3 goals. So they were able to hit the scoreboard. and they hit Melbourne in the mouth. And when you do that in a final, it often goes in your favour.
Oh, it was, what can you say? I think North Melbourne are definitely the ones that have come out of this going, where we are actually contenders. I mean, the Adelaide-Brisbane game, if you look at that game, it was a very close game throughout. I actually got to sit down and watch each game this week. I was working in them. And I just went, I'm going to actually watch them, see the excitement. Saints aren't in it, so I can go for either side and actually enjoy the game as it is. Adelaide-Brisbane was just one of those games where either side could have won. Adelaide had a chance late in the game. 15 seconds left. They had a kick into their forward 50. They could have won the game. The Gold Coast-Sydney game, Sydney got off to a good start, and I think that's the talking point of the season now, is Sydney going winless from Season 7 into winning a final this season.
Well, who better to talk about it with than an actual Swans fan who's given me a bit of stick for one of my predictions, but good on you. Fish, how'd you see it?
Fantastic, to be honest. I know that the Swans, they weren't far off last season. I mean, they lost a couple of games closely, but it's always quite tough being, I guess, the new team. You know, I think, was it Adelaide? There was Hawthorn, Essendon, and the Swans as well. And I think maybe there haven't been 4 wins total from those sides. There wasn't many wins at all. But a lot of it comes down to recruitment. And Ali Morfitt, the Swans ruckman in the All-Australian squad, got announced today. Only played half the season, but that impact she had was outstanding. And then who else to talk about but Chloe Malloy? What
Just read
a
out
signing.
3 goals won, 15 disposals, 5 marks, and 3 tackles.
And 1 crowd sledge as well. I believe they said that she couldn't kick straight, and she let them know that she could. 6'8". You can't kick straight. So
no, but I think the talking point from this season has been Essendon in their second season making the finals, and I think Sydney has definitely flown under the radar in the sense of they just scraped into the finals, and then, well, out of the 4 teams, Essendon were the hot talking point, and yet they're out of the final. Sydney have won a final. They're still in it. And who knows what can happen this week. I mean, they've got nothing to lose, and it's their mentality of why not us? Or
that's the Swans. It's the Bloods culture, isn't it? The Swans never really give up. And I guess with the Swans not having an AFLW team until last season, I never really watched it or kept closely eyes on the AFLW. But when your team's in there, you just want them to win. You really, no matter if it's men's, women's, reserves, you want the Swans to do well. And the fact that someone like Chloe Malloy has gone up to Sydney, and she said how much she did struggle with that move from Melbourne, and to captain the team at such a young age as well.
It's incredible.
It's such a big story. I look back at that first game of the season against the Giants where she just kicked 2 just remarkable goals, and it just proves how good she is. And yeah, she's been under a lot of pressure, let's be honest.
Yeah.
Like, to go up there, she was the key face of the Swans. The Swans didn't have one last season, and she's like quite a well-known figure. And she's just done unbelievable. She's not an All-Australian this year. I'll be very surprised because she deserves it.
Yeah, and you mentioned like the difficulty in moving and being under so much pressure, and then captaining a team in their second year to the finals is quite something to behold. But someone else that should be lauded, Laura Gardner, 30 disposals, 10 tackles and 7 clearances, really dominated in there when the Gold Coast just seemed to break down a little bit. I mean, they beat the Bombers in the last round, but without Rowbottom.
That's what I say. They are missing Rowbottom.
It did hurt them a bit.
Of a Swans midfield bull as well, mind you.
And she's a midfield bull herself. So they did beat Essendon without Charlie, but in that final, when the whips are cracking and it's a bit hotter in at the coalface, they really did miss Charlie Rowbottom inside, and that really allowed Gardner to get so much of the footy and really get it going the Swans' way. So unfortunately for the Suns, I was pretty high on them, but yeah, it's funny how when it gets a bit hotter, when your star players aren't playing, it does let you down in this competition, unfortunately. But the Bombers also were let down, but as it is in pretty much any football you can think about, the Geelong Cats are just such a force. Yeah,
well, I mean, it's the story of this weekend, really. 3 of the games are almost decided by the first quarters. Geelong, 3-0 in the first quarter. They were 7-2 at halftime, almost running on the wall there. I think they went on to win by about 18 points in the end. Essendon did hold them goalless in the last quarter, but it was the starts, and it's going to be interesting to see what happens against Melbourne.
Yeah,
I just had to
massive
check my
game.
notes there. Melbourne have to bounce back, and Geelong are the form team, so it's going to be interesting to see there.
And they got over Essendon, who had a lot of people bullish on their chances because of how far they'd come. Similar to Sydney, they would have had that motivation, thinking, what have we really got to lose? We haven't been around for very long. This is awesome. But I think they were just a bit starstruck to be there, maybe, at the start of the game. And, I mean, Georgie Prespakis, in the Battle of Prespakis, 1 goal, 23 disposals, 2 tackles and 9 clearances, which is so important to be able to do damage on the inside and the outside and score in a game like that. Manny's Prespakis kicked 2 goals and was pretty damaging, 5 tackles as well, but in the end Georgie got the chocolates and her team moves on, and again, I backed them to make some real damage happen, and I think they will, because Melbourne, I've already been over it, but they might be a little bit mentally scarred. They might be, like their men's team gets sometimes, a bit unsure of where they actually are, what their position actually is in the makeup of the finals, which is so great. I love that about sport, how there's always got to be one winner in every game, and each winner changes the course of the whole final series.
It's not going to matter when there's red and white on the cup in a couple of weeks' time, boys. Just letting you know.
We won't have too much chat from Fish if he's going to be like that. But some chat we will talk is that Brisbane, well, they impressed me as well, and I haven't really got too much else to say about them other than they kicked straight and they won, which is something that I said. I said they just need to kick straight, and they're actually a really good team, and they're in great form too.
Well, it was this game, close game throughout. The first quarter was 2 goals, 3 to 1 goal, and Brisbane led the start. Once again, it was the start, and then Adelaide fought back, and by 3/4 time, the scores were 33 apiece, and Adelaide kicked 4 behinds to Brisbane's solitary goal, which in the end was the difference. And, Eloise Jones for Adelaide kicked 4 goals in the losing effort, was pretty much a standout, but
Marinoff had 25, 7 clearances and 8 tackles as well. But, it was a great game on the Brisbane side from pretty much the whole team, and that's how you've got to beat a team like Adelaide, and Ali Anderson really led that. She had 17 and a goal herself and 6 tackles, and they set up a home preliminary final, which is so big for Brisbane, a team that sort of looked, I'm sure they didn't internally, but they looked to lack a bit of confidence, but beating Adelaide's going to give you mega confidence. And now the Crows, who I said were the absolute danger team of the comp, have got to head back home and host the Swans this Saturday in a huge do-or-die semi-final. And don't ask me to pick that, because the momentum of a team like the Swans, 2016 Bulldogs in the men's sort of story, you never really know. And then obviously Melbourne and Geelong on the Sunday at Icon Park.
Well, I just got to touch on the Swans. I mentioned last week, and I'm going to mention again, their mentality, their attitude, the way that they look at the game. They played Fremantle in round 23. Round 23, round 10. Last round. But they played them there, and Chloe Malloy said that they're playing on Sydney time. They were doing everything on Sydney time. They've gone into the Gold Coast game on Sydney time. Obviously, it's a lot easier to do, but I reckon they'll be doing the same thing. They're going to have their bodies set, so it might be half an hour behind us, but they're going to be playing as though they were on Sydney time. Their recoveries, their preparations and everything, they're not going to change it just to play Adelaide as they did against Freo.
And that's the challenge, because obviously they've gone, it's pretty crazy, and if they are to do it, and that's why I said it's 2016 men's Western Bulldogs-esque, because they travelled pretty much to every state of the country to win that premiership. And if Sydney are to make the grand final, they've already gone to Perth in round 10, as you mentioned. They've just come from Queensland, and now they've got to fly to Adelaide. I'm sure they'll stop off at home first, but they've got to fly to Adelaide, and then they'll have to fly to Melbourne if they are to win. So it's a pretty crazy schedule. I think they might burn out at some point, but if they don't, I'm quite impressed. Yeah. It's going to be a massive game. And as for the other one, Melbourne and Geelong, well, they get to stay put at home this weekend, and I can't really pick that one either, but the Cats, I think they're a little bit of a sniff.
I know you won't be able to pick, but I'll do the can and can'ts again. So see if they've changed, okay? So We'll start off with the 2 prelim winners. North Melbourne.
No.
So you still don't think North Melbourne can win the flag?
No.
Okay, so Brisbane,
Yes.
Adelaide,
Yes.
Melbourne.
I'm not really sure on Melbourne. I can't really pick them, but I really think just because they've been there before, yes.
Geelong
Yes.
and Sydney.
No.
Okay, so it's going to be interesting. I'm actually going to say...
Again, I'll be very impressed if the Swans do it, and if they do, it's the greatest story in the history of football. But you can't... Any athlete, if you're flying around the country in a 1 month period, you're going to burn out at some point.
But
and
come
they're
on,
going to
go for the Hollywood moment here.
They've got some pretty good teams on their horizon.
Go for the Hollywood moment. Say Sydney can win it when they go winless in season 7 to winning it the following year. Like, does that remind you of like any other sporting?
Well, that's the
Like,
beauty
so
of
Leicester
this
City.
setup. It's
Leicester
first.
City, yes.
It's first versus 8th this weekend, and I think the Crows will get it done quite easily.
But obviously, we'll revisit these can and can'ts next week. But I'm surprised you haven't changed your tone on North Melbourne, who have a home prelim, and if they win, they get the home grand final. So they'll be out to prove you wrong, I reckon.
Well, they've done it once. Let's see if they can do it twice. But they won't be out there this weekend. Like I said, Adelaide and Sydney on Saturday, and Geelong and Melbourne on Sunday. So make sure you catch a bit of AFLW action this weekend. It'll be semi-final Saturday and Sunday. And we'll be talking about it, no doubt, next episode.
And moving on, we've had to say goodbye to Fisher. The NBL, I'm not too happy about this. The throwdown was this past weekend, and it was the United mob getting the job done against my Phoenix. What was the game like? You were there.
Yeah, I went along with a few mates. I was celebrating one of our best mate, Elijah's birthday, and hadn't seen him in a while, so it was good. And we were up in the top tier, up in the bleachers.
The
But
nosebleeds?
yeah, but it's enjoyable from everywhere at John Cain Arena, and it was a South East Melbourne home game, and I'll give them credit. Absolutely incredible atmosphere. They do it so well, and basketball, from where it's come from, I hadn't been to an NBL game in a while, and we used to be good back then. This was about maybe 5 years ago, but it's so much better now. It's so close to those Premier Leagues around the world, and I would say, yeah, almost as good. The basketball itself is outstanding, and just the way the crowd's always engaged, always pumped up, and such a nice and awesome, atmosphere and great arena to watch in. So very enjoyable. I got to see a standard Chris Golding masterclass. He has got to be in Melbourne United history as one of the best ever players to lace them up. Just draining threes that you probably shouldn't even think he should be shooting, but it just does it again and again and again, inside, outside, and very exciting play to watch, especially when you're at the opposing Melbourne side's home game and he's taking and making shots like that. There was a lot of energy as well. Joe Luala-Chul was incredible as well, the big man, such a star for United. And we were without a few key players. I was keen to watch my man Daly, who's not in action at the moment, but they still got the job done. It was a close one. I reckon right up until about the 4 minute mark in the last quarter, with about 4 or 5 minutes to go, it was very tight. It wasn't really a lead of more than 4 or 5, and then United were able to pull away. It was a massive game. It was first versus third as it stood at that point, and obviously the finals are locked in for the top 2. So Melbourne at the moment, with that win, go to 9-2, stay on top of the table. And South East Melbourne have fallen down to 4th, just below the Jack Jumpers there at 6-5. And as we always say, all the games are a bit out of whack with how everyone plays more games on each other or less games on each other, so it's not all even. But yeah, it was a great atmosphere, and it was really cool to see South East Melbourne owners, John Wall and Nick Kyrgios, getting around the action as well. Pretty cool to see John Wall during the week in full kit as well, practicing at one of the gyms in the city.
We might have needed him, I reckon, especially in that last few minutes, as you said, and you kind of ran away with it. It was close, but I think it was CG just pulled it up and got you guys to
you got me
speechless.
You got me one step closer to staying on the Melbourne United wagon, which I've always been, but the old fella across from me is trying to jump me the ship over to the Phoenix, but I said, they need to win the championship before we win another one. And at the moment, we're looking in the best position. We had a little bit of a bet on the weekend, but I forgot to fulfill that. But Woodsy was meant to be here in United colours. He's a lucky man today. But yeah, that went in my favour. It's always good to watch United win at home, especially against the Phoenix, who I rate really highly. It was really cool to watch. Mitch Creek is an absolute star, as is a few others on that roster. They've built it really well. And as an expansion team a few years ago, they've really come in as a force and consistently producing. So in terms of the NBL, our two teams going quite well, but below them, obviously, Sydney are in second, and they're just always going to contend. Tasmania, as I mentioned, in third, and Perth and Cairns are below Southeast Melbourne in the play-in spots at the moment. Well, above that line, and below the line in the bottom four, Brisbane, Adelaide, New Zealand and Illawarra. So a lot more to come in the NBL. Maybe one day we might see John Wall in Phoenix colours. Hopefully not in my favour, but either way, it's a great competition and continues to impress. And as we talked about last week, another BL, Woodsy?
Yeah, it starts this weekend, actually. So we had a few practice games throughout the league in the Australian Baseball League. So this week, it's Melbourne will play host to Perth, Adelaide will play host to Brisbane, and Sydney play host to Canberra in a league where, I mean, it doesn't get the attention as you mentioned last week, but the names and the quality of players that are coming over, you got the ABL mainstays, but then you got Major League players who are people with Major League experience. I think the biggest one is Greg Bird, as I mentioned last week. Excited to see what he will do for the Melbourne Aces. And with going back to a 6-team competition, it's going to be a lot more evenness to it. Obviously, as I mentioned last week, Geelong, Korea and Auckland have withdrawn. So it goes back to the original 6 teams. And I'm not going to be able to pick a winner till about halfway through when you actually see which teams perform, because it's unlike other competitions where you can read into the form. The teams change so much from season to season. It's like, yeah, I'm obviously going to go for the Melbourne team because I've got that connection there, but it wouldn't surprise me, and I'll go, it's either going to be, I could say the Melbourne team, but Adelaide being the reigning champions, I'll go that they will be going strong again. But yeah, we'll revisit this in a couple of weeks' time and see if I'm right or wrong in the sense of Melbourne and Adelaide getting good starts.
Outstanding. It's, as I said last week, it really is a league that does deserve all the love, and it's not quite up to the standard. Oh, not up to standard, I shouldn't say that. That's not what I mean. It's not quite up to the hype as the main Australian sports, because I guess it isn't quite Australian made, but it's definitely worth going to watch and getting around because it's outstanding. And I mentioned it might not be Australian made. Something that is Australian made and impressing is our athletes around the grounds. And this week, it's a bit of a shorter segment with no F1 race and not too much to talk about through the NFL, but my weekly wonder, and I'm just trying to research this at the moment because it's quite impressed me. I've seen during the week that the NCAA rankings have come out for kicker and punter duos. And I've seen a number of Australian names. So officially, and this was posted back at the start of the month, the number one kicker and punter duo in college football in America is Drew Stevens and Australian Tory Taylor for the Iowa club, which is quite remarkable to consider that Tory is basically the best in the business in the country for the Iowa Hawkeyes alongside his kicking mate. And then I went down the list and I'm like, well, who's the next best? And well, it's James Burnip from Mount Macedon in Victoria. It's Burnip and Will Ricard, I hope I've said that right, for the Alabama Crimson Tide. So we've got the top 2 punters in the game at the moment, Woodsy, which is quite an achievement. And then the list goes on to about 50, and both Fletcher boys are in it. And the Fletcher name is one that should be known to a lot of Australian football fans because they are the sons of Dustin Fletcher, 400-game player for the Essendon Bombers. And both players are in the top 50. The higher-ranked brother is Max for the Arkansas Razorbacks. He's alongside Cam Little And then obviously Mason is in there as well. He had an awesome season for Cincinnati, making the playoff. So really cool to see a lot of Aussie names doing it so well. And Pro Kick Australia just continues to become a factory of the best punters in the world. So I mentioned, those two at the top. Tory Taylor and James Burnip, top of the rankings. Both Fletchers involved as well. And I'm sure there's a few more that I may have left out. But really cool to see that in a game we didn't create, in a game that's not played to a professional level, really, in our country. It's played at an amateur level. But in a game that has not been born to us, to have the best players at a position in the college level is pretty cool. And we've got a pretty decent player base in the NFL as well.
It could be here a podcast by itself going into that. But what about the NBA?
Yeah, well, as you mentioned, those Fletcher boys, and they really got it from Dustin, because if you ever watched Dustin play footy, that's Australian footy, he could absolutely roost the thing. And they can certainly do the same thing and doing it beautifully in the States. But the NBA, well, I've been mentioning over the last few episodes, and they just keep playing every day. So I can't quite keep you perfectly updated on every single point they score. But someone I want to bring up out of the group of Aussies is my main man, Duop Reith, who was outstanding in the World Cup, earned himself a roster spot, and officially made his debut for Rip City, Portland, the Portland Trail Blazers, and he made his debut at what I still like to say is the Staples Center. But apparently these days we've got to call it something different. It was against the Lakers. They didn't quite get the job done, but Duop, 11 points on his debut, which is a pretty cool effort from him, and we're very proud of him. He can do it all, really. Rebounding monster. He can stroke the three as well, and very decent playmaker for his size. And the 27-year-old rookie centre scored 11 points, as I mentioned, in his debut, and he's a Sudan-born Australian. And he hit a three-pointer as well, which got everyone up and about. Great to see Duop finally get some minutes for the Blazers, who are, like I mentioned last week, still trying to rebuild and pick up the pieces after their franchise superstar, Damian Lillard, jumped ship and went over to Milwaukee in the off-season. But great to see him get his debut. And with the Olympics next year, I'll keep you updated on the national team and how all our boys are going. It would be good to see the likes of Paddy Mills, the Australian legend, get a few more minutes in Atlanta, but he's behind a couple of pretty decent guards there. But that's all for the NBA this week. I was just going to give a quick update. The NFL, obviously, we've got our punting group doing brilliantly. Dicko, Mitch Wisnowski, obviously Cam Johnston as well. And who could forget Lou Headley, a show favourite. Adam Gotsis as well, Adam Falale, and Jordan Mailata, doing it brilliantly. And I'll give you a proper long recap of the NFL at the halfway point, as we are now 10 weeks through of 18, so the halfway point just 2 weeks away. And obviously Formula 1 and Formula 2 are about to conclude their season. This weekend, the first ever Las Vegas Grand Prix will take place in Las Vegas, Nevada, and it's scheduled to be about 4 degrees on track, which is really weird because to adhere to the European market, which is massive for F1, they actually have to start the race at about 11 o'clock, 11:30 at night in Vegas, which are not too many Eastern Americans residents are too happy about. But it'll start at 11 or around that time. But it's good for us in Australia. If you want to catch the F1 race this Sunday, it'll start at about 5 p.m. on Sunday, which is terrific. So just before dinner, crack one open and watch the cars go around that new track, which is going to be absolutely lightning fast. Hopefully Danny Rick and Oscar Piastri can end up in the points once again, as Oscar tries to gun for that 8th spot in the championship in his rookie year, and Danny Rick tries to get some form back in the car. And then they've got one more race after that in beautiful Abu Dhabi, and F2 also concludes in Abu Dhabi, and our man Jack Doohan is going to try and get into the top 2 there for the championship. But that's all I've got time for Aussies Around the Grounds, and that's all we've got time for this Mega Sports episode. A lot going on the rest of this week. I cannot wait. I'm getting quite Josh giddy thinking about it. We've got AFLW finals, we've got World Cup finals, ABL, NBL, NBA, NFL, and of course Las Vegas Grand Prix to end it all. And then after that, Woodsy and I and the boys will be back for the next episode. Make sure you join us for that, and until then, enjoy the sport.